We have just completed Canto 4 of the Book of Yoga, Savitri's journey into the inner countries. She had met 3 Madonnas and she is now moving forward, closer to the region of her soul. Onward she passed, seeking the soul's mystic cave. Savitri is keen to find her soul. She has received a command that first she must discover her soul. The soul forces which she met were parts of her own being, and she had promised them that she would go to the Supreme and bring power so that these soul forces can become effective in their work. Onward she passed, seeking the soul's mystic cave. At first she stepped into a night of God, the soul's mystic cave, Hridaya Guha. It is there in the Guha, in the cave, that the soul is residing. It is a place deep within, and to access that place, well, that you can remove, please. A place of total solitude from the world. It is a place of total solitude from the world, away from the marketplace of the human noises, of the vital emotions, passions, of mental thoughts, conflicting ideas and views. All those things are away from that place, a place of total solitude. And it is in that mystic cave that the soul resides. Soul, the Angushta Matra Purusha, a being no bigger than the thumb of man. It is he who resides in that mystic cave. So Savitri is entering into that mystic cave. At first she stepped into a night of God. Night of God. This looks sort of paradoxical. Can God have night? It is not God who can have night. It is we who can have night of God. Night of God would mean all the human faculties, the mental notions, mental ideas, mental formulations, the vital emotions, passions, feelings, all these things have fallen silent. They have become quiet. They are not responding to any movement, any activity at all. And in that sense, they have become totally calm, totally quiet. In other words, if Savitri wants to know something to the mind, she cannot know. If Savitri wants to feel something through her heart, she cannot. In other words, she has no instruments now of getting those feelings, those ideas from anywhere, and therefore she has fallen into the night of God. At first she entered into a night of God. The light was quenched that helps the laboring world. The light was quenched that helps the laboring world. What is that light? The light of mind, of reason, of rational. The light coming from the vital, that has fallen, that has become dim. It got lost. The light was quenched that helps the laboring world. The power that struggles and stumbles in our life. This inefficient mind gave up its thoughts. The striving heart, its unavailing hopes. Heart has given up its hopes. Mind has given up its thoughts. The struggle of life has ceased, and it is because of that there is a kind of a blankness. It is that blankness which is the night of God. Now this is a typical experience which Savitri alone would have it. Night of God is essentially, one might say, a Christian experience, Christian spiritual realization. It is not so much there in the Indian spirituality. So Savitri is realizing that particular state of the night of God. And that night is a very acceptable night, is a very desirable night, because all the human faculties have become quiet, and what can come out is only the response directly from the soul. The striving heart is unavailing hopes. The inefficient mind is thoughts. They have given up their faculties. All knowledge failed, and the ideas of forms. She cannot know anything. Even the ideas, forms have disappeared. And wisdom, screened in awe, her lowly head. Wisdom is feeling ashamed, so to say, and is putting her head down. Wisdom, screened in awe, her lowly head, feeling a truth too great for thought or speech, formless, ineffable, forever the same. Not only heart and mind, but knowledge and wisdom, all have become helpless, and innocent and holy ignorance, very desirable ignorance, holy, pure. There is a kind of innocence, a psychic quality is there in that state, and it is that response which would count the most. All the human faculties have disappeared, have fallen quiet, and it is only the psychic response which will be operating now. An innocent and holy ignorance, adored like one who works in formless God, who worships God. The unseen light she could not claim nor own. An innocent and holy ignorance, adored like one who worships formless God. The unseen light she could not claim nor own. Savitri is not yet in possession of that unseen light. In a simple purity of emptiness, it is that blankness, simple purity, that is the quality of that night of God, of that holy ignorance. It is the psychic quality. What is coming out most prominently is a psychic perception, the perception of the soul. So all the other faculties have been kind of pushed out. Mental, vital, physical, everything is pushed out. In a single purity, in a simple purity of emptiness, her mind knelt down before the unknowable. That is what Savitri mind is in. All was abolished, save her naked self. What has remained is only her pure self. Everything has disappeared. All was abolished, save her naked self and the prostrate yearning of a surrendered heart. These are the only two things which have remained. Her prostrate yearning, her humility, her surrendered heart, her quiet desire. It is only that which has remained. Simple purity of emptiness. She has no desire of any kind at all. That is the simple purity of emptiness. All was abolished, save her naked self, and the prostrate yearning of a surrendered heart. There was no strength in her, no pride of force. The lofty burning of desire had sunk. Yes, I would like to do this, I would like to have this, that desire, that loftiness of desire also has sunk. Ashamed, a vanity of separate the self, the hope of spiritual greatness fled. I want to be spiritually great. Ambition of spiritual realizations, that has also fled. Salvation, she asked not, nor a heavenly crown. She does not want those heavenly gifts. Salvation, moksha, she is not worried about that. She doesn't care about that. She doesn't need that. Humanity seemed now to proud estate. Yes, she is human, but that also looks very proud. Yes, I can do this, I can do that. I have such mental faculties, I have such vital capacities, I got this life force working in me. I'm an artist, I'm a musician, I'm a philosopher, I'm a thinker. That kind of a proud pride also has disappeared. There was no strength in her, no pride of force. The lofty burning of desire had sunk. Ashamed, a vanity was separate self. The hope of spiritual greatness fled. Salvation she asked not, nor a heavenly crown. Humanity seemed now too proud a state. Herself was nothing. God alone was all. Yet God she knew not, but only knew He was. Herself was nothing. God alone was all. That is the greatness of this night of God. It is in this night of God what is seen, what is active, what matters, what counts is only God, God alone. A sacred darkness brooded now within, a sacred darkness. What a wonderful state Savitri is in what a wonderful state she is. A sacred darkness brooded now within. The world was a deep darkness, great and new. Everything is short of content. This void held more than all the teeming world. This emptiness, this hollowness, this nothingness is not really nothing in the sense that it has a capacity to hold everything. This void held more than all the teeming world, all these worlds, millions and millions of worlds, it can hold in that. This blank felt more than all that time has borne. Whatever time can carry, it is this which can be borne. This darkness, this dark knew dumbly, immensely the unknown. But all was formless, voiceless, infinite. As might a shadow walk in a shadowy scene, so Savitri is now moving like a shadow in a shadowy scene, as might a shadow walk in a shadowy scene, a small knot passing through a mightier knot, a small nothingness passing through a mightier nothingness. A night of person in a bare outline, crossing a fathomless impersonal night. Silent she moved, empty and absolute. She is now moving in the impersonal night, the universal night, not her personal night, but universal night. It is through that she is moving. As might a shadow walk in a shadowy scene, a small knot passing through a mightier knot, a night of person in a bare outline, crossing a fathomless impersonal line, silent she moved, empty and absolute. In endless time her soul reached a wide end. The spaceless vast became her spirit's place. Savitri has entered into the world of her soul. At first, she experiences the night of God. The night of God means all the human faculties has ceased to operate. There is no sense of cognition. There is no sense of understanding, no perception. She has become a kind of a blank. Therefore, it is a kind of a night. She cannot see anything because all the organs of perception are out of function at the moment here. And she is moving now in that night of God like a shadow. As might a shadow walk in a shadowy scene. The whole scene is a shadowy scene, dark. And in the darkness, Savitri is walking like a shadow. As might a shadow walk in a shadowy scene, a small knot passing through a mightier knot, a night of person in a bare outline, crossing a fathomless impersonal knot. Silent she moved, empty and absolute. That is how Savitri is moving in that mightier knot. As might a shadow walk in a shadowy scene. This is a very beautiful line poetically. As might a shadow walk in a shadowy scene. We have got a might, as might a shadow walk in a shadowy scene. I am, Anarchist. That is the movement of the line. As might a shadow walk in a shadowy scene. In endless time her soul reached a wide end. Endless time she reaches a wide end. The spaceless vast became her spirit's place. So she has already become spaceless. She has become timeless. In endless time her soul reached a wide end. The spaceless vast became her spirit's place. At last a change approached. The emptiness broke. That emptiness, that night that broke. The emptiness broke. A wave rippled within the stir. The world had stirred. Once more, her inner self became her space. The night of God has gone away, and her inner space became her space. There was felt a blissful nearness to the goal. Savitri is already feeling the nearness of the goal. What is her goal? Her goal is to find his soul. She is very close to the discovery of her soul. There was felt a blissful nearness to the goal. Heaven leaned low to kiss the sacred hill. That is the poetic way of describing the joy of the discovery. Heaven leaned low to kiss the sacred hill. The air trembled with passion and delight. This is happiness. She is about to discover her soul. This is happiness. A rose of splendor on a tree of dreams. Imagine a tree of dreams, and on the tree of dreams, it is the rose of splendor which is blossoming. A rose of splendor on a tree of dreams. The face of dawn out of moon twilight grew. She was in the night of God. Already the dawn is approaching. There is the early moon there in the twilight, and it is in that twilight she sees the face of dawn. Something is about to now open out in her. She is about to meet her soul. The face of dawn out of moon twilight grew. Day came. Yes, night is over, dawn has come. Now the day also has come. Day came, priest of sacrifice. Day came, priest of a sacrifice of joy. Day has come as a person. What for? To offer sacrifice, to do yajna of creation. Day came, priest of a sacrifice of joy. It is he who is going to do the yajna. And to the worshipping silence of her world. He has already arrived to carry out this yajna. Into the worshipping silence of her world, he carried a master, he carried a mortal luster as his robe. That priest is carrying on his body a mortal luster. He carried a mortal luster as his robe, trailed heaven like a purple scarf, and wore as his vermilion caste mark a red sun. The day is a priest, the sun is rising, and on the east you see the sun as a red, round red caste mark. He is the priest. He has got that auspicious sign on his forehead now. He carried a mortal luster as his robe, trailed heaven like a purple scarf, and wore as his vermilion caste mark a red sun. Now there is a little difficulty here. This line, he carried a mortal luster as his robe, is a dictated line. It is not a line available, is not there at all in Sri Aurobindo's own handwriting. It is a line by dictation. Now, the 1950 edition has got a mortal luster. The University edition 1954 also has a mortal luster. But all the subsequent editions of Savitri has got, he carried an immortal luster. It is not immortal, an immortal luster. He carried an immortal luster as his robe. It is exactly the opposite. Instead of immortal, it has become an immortal luster. Now, it is argued very cleverly that perhaps the immortal luster, an immortal, was misheard by the scribe, by Nirodharan. What might have been dictated is, he carried an immortal luster, an immortal luster. He caught only in the nature of a mortal luster. The way the word is pronounced, he heard it like, or rather he took it down as a mortal luster. But it is possible, it is in fact argued that what Sri Aurobindo would have dictated is an immortal luster. Now this is a point, this is an issue which cannot be resolved at all. No amount of arguments can settle the issue, whether it is a mortal luster or an immortal luster. But there is one thing which is important. The 1954 edition, the university edition, has a mortal luster, and it is that text which the mother had read, and she reads it a mortal luster. She reads it as a mortal luster. In fact, that should settle the issue completely. There is no question of going back to, and there is no question of proposing an immortal luster. She has read it as a mortal luster, and one should go entirely by that. Now, he carried a mortal luster is a perfectly valid phrase. It makes true sense also. He is carrying a robe which is a mortal luster. He has come down into this world of this creation, and the robe which he is wearing is the robe of mortality. This priest, he has got this vermilion mark on his forehead. He is wearing a purple scarf. That is the robe. He is wearing a purple scarf, and he is coming here. He has come into this mortal creation, and therefore it makes perfect sense to have he carried a mortal luster. In fact, an immortal luster, to a certain extent, looks somewhat artificial, as if an old remembered dream come true. This priest has come, as if some dream has become actual. She recognized in her prophetic mind, Savitri in her foreseeing mind, in her prophetic mind, at once recognizes the imperishable luster of the sky. She is approaching her soul, and she recognizes the luster which does not fade, which does not become dim. The imperishable luster of the sky, the tremulous sweetness of that happy air, and covered from mind's view and life's approach, the mystic cavern in the sacred hill, and knew the dwelling of her secret soul. The mystic cavern, Hridaya Guha, cavern, cave. In that Guha, she discerns the presence of her soul. As if an old remembered dream come true, she recognized in her prophetic mind the imperishable luster of the sky, the tremulous sweetness of that happy air, and covered from mind's view and life's approach, the mystic cavern in the sacred hill, and knew the dwelling of her secret soul. Savitri was passing through the night of God. Then she suddenly sees the day coming like a priest of sacrifice of joy. And as the day comes, she remembers the old thing, as if an old remembered dream come true. She recognizes in her prophetic mind the imperishable luster of the sky, and she is closer now to the mystic cavern of her soul, the cavern in the sacred hill, and knew the dwelling of her secret soul, as if in some Elysian occult depth, truth's last retreat from thought's profaning touch. Now this is the position, this is the place beyond which what exists is only truth, and no thought can touch and spoil it, can violate its purity, can disfigure it. Truth's last retreat from thought's profaning touch, as if in a rock temple's solitude hid. It is a sacred hill, and in the sacred hill there is a rock temple carved in the rock of the hill. As if in a rock temple's solitude hid, God's refuge from an ignorant, worshipping world. It is there God is residing, away from the ignorant world. Ignorant world cannot go and disfigure it, spoil it. Ignorant was, it lay withdrawn even from life's inner sense. It has become inaccessible. It is inaccessible even to the inner sense of life. So thought cannot reach, life's inner sense cannot reach. It lay withdrawn even from life's inner sense, receding from the estranged heart's desire. No feeling, no emotion can touch it, no thought can reach it. A marvelous brooding twilight met the eyes, or Savitri sees the twilight world there. A marvelous brooding twilight met the eyes, and a holy stillness held that voiceless space. An awful dimness wrapped the great rock doors. The rock doors are covered, wrapped by an awful dimness. In other words, they look very dim as Savitri approaches to the doors. An awful dimness wrapped the great rock doors, carved in the massive stone of matter's trance. These are the doors which have been cut into matter, and therefore they are massive, therefore they are also dim. It is through this door that Savitri is now entering into the cave where dwells her soul. An awful dimness wrapped the great rock doors, carved in the massive stone of matter's trance. On the door, two golden serpents round the lintel curd. This is the lintel of the door. The door is here. This is the lintel. And on that lintel, what does she see? That there are two golden serpents curling around it. Two golden serpents around the lintel curl, enveloping it with a pure and dreadful strength. They are powerful, but at the same time pure. In other words, one who is weak cannot enter into that door. One who is not pure, he cannot enter to that door at all. Two golden serpents round the lintel curl, enveloping it with their pure and dreadful strength, looked out with wisdom's deep and luminous eyes. It is these serpents which are not deceptive as you have in the vital world, but when they are on the doors of the temple in which lives the soul, they are pure, they are strong, and they are full of wisdom. Their eyes are luminous. Two golden serpents round the lintel curl, enveloping it with their pure and dreadful strength, looked out with wisdom's deep and luminous eyes. This is what we have on the lintel of the door. Two serpents there. And above that, an eagle covered it with white conquering wings. There is a huge, big, lustrous, bright, powerful eagle which is standing there with conquering wings. Eagle and serpents, they are enemies. But here, on the door leading into the soul, into the temple of the soul, what we have, they are not enemies here at all. They are living together, the eagle and the serpent. An eagle, insignia of majesty, of power. That is what the eagle is. An eagle conquered it with white conquering, covered it with white conquering wing, flames of self-lost, immobile reverie. Doves crowded the grey musing cornices like sculptured postures of white-bosomed peace. So you have the serpents, you have the eagle, and there are doves, birds of peace, of quiet, of silence, so to say also. Doves crowded the grey musing cornices like sculptured postures of white-bosomed peace. There is peace because of the white doves there. Across the thresholds asleep, she entered in. Savitri is now entering through this door to find her soul within. Across the thresholds asleep, she entered in and found herself amid great figures of gods. Savitri is entering into the inner courtyard of the temple. She has crossed the door, Matter's door, and she is now in the main courtyard of the temple. Across the thresholds asleep, she entered in and found herself amid great figures of God, conscious in stones and living without breath. These gods are carved in the rock there. They are in stones. They are not breathing, but at the same time they are conscious of their power, of what they are. They are fully conscious of that. In fact, that is what Sri Aurobindo experienced when he went to a temple in Baroda, Chandod. He saw the living presence of a goddess in the deity where he had gone there. Across the thresholds sleep, she entered in and found herself amid great figures of gods. There are all gods there, Indra, Varuna, Agni, Vayu, all the gods are carved in stones there. Herself amid great figures of God, conscious in stone and living without breath, watching with fixed regard the soul of man. And what are these gods doing? They are watching the soul of man. Executive figures of the cosmic self, they are the ones who carry out the work of the cosmic self in the manifestation here, in the universe here. Executive figures of the cosmic self, world symbols of immutable potency. They are the figures. They are holding all the power, all the possibilities of this world, immutable potency of this world. On the walls, on the temple walls, courtyard walls there, on the walls, covered with significant shapes, looked at her, the life scene of man and beast. So in the temple, you have got walls, and there are life scenes of man and beast, of animals, of this creation, and the high meaning of the life of gods, the power and necessity of these numberless worlds and faces of beings and stretches of world space, spoke the succinct and inexhaustible hieratic message of the climbing planes. Now, the significant shapes on the walls of the temple, they are telling her what they are there for, what they are doing here in this world. They are not just paintings, they are living presences, they are living possibilities also, and a high meaning of the life of gods, what these gods are here for. The power and necessity of these numberless worlds. Why these countless worlds? The whole hierarchy of worlds, starting from matter all the way up to the superconscient realms. There are worlds and worlds and worlds. We say Saptaloka, we say Saptapatala. What is the meaning of these Saptalokas? What are they for? Are they redundant? Is not earth sufficient to give whatever has to be got here? Is earth not sufficient? What is the necessity of these countless worlds, these numberless worlds? In fact, the same question can be asked in terms of the astronomical understanding of our universe. We have a small little planet Earth, but then there are millions and millions of stars. What is the necessity of those stars? Are they serving any purpose in this creation? Is there any meaning in their existence? Or we simply watch them helplessly without understanding the necessity of their presence in the sky all around us? What is the necessity of this numberless worlds? The world of mind, the world of life, the world of matter. In fact, not world of matter, worlds of matter, worlds of life, worlds of mind, worlds of spiritual mind, worlds of knowledge, worlds of joy, worlds of beauty. What are they there for? Is there any connection with this earth? This is what Savitri is saying, that they are there, but they are also telling, yes, they are there for a purpose. The power and necessity, that is important. Without their presence there, things cannot happen here. The power and necessity of the numberless world and faces of beings and stretches of world space spoke the succinct and inexhaustible hieratic message. She is understanding the message they are conveying, the precise, the exact message, which is also sacred. She is understanding of the climbing plains, the ascending slopes of heaven. That is what the Vedic Rishi says. These ascending slopes of heaven, What is the purpose of that? Ascending. Yes, it is for the purpose of ascension that these countless worlds are present. In their immensitude, shining infinity, they were the extension of the self of God. These countless worlds, these numberless worlds, are themselves the extension of the self of God Himself. They were the extension of the self of God and housed impassively, receiving all His figure and His small and mighty acts, and His passion and His birth and life and death. All this they are able to tell what they are for. And the passion and His birth and the life and the, His figures and in their immense, I think you're about that. In their immensitude, shining infinity, they were the extension of the self of God and housed impassively receiving all His figures and His small and mighty acts and His passion and His birth and life and death and His return to immortality. Yes, God has taken birth here. His passions, His life instincts, they are all there here. He undergoes to the process of birth and death. For what? To return to immortality. That is why this whole hierarchy there, these ascending slopes are for that purpose. To the abiding and eternal is the climb. What is here transient? What is here only for a moment, which keeps on constantly changing? Their concern is to reach what is abiding, which is enduring, which will always stay. To the abiding and eternal is the climb. To the pure existence everywhere the same. To the sheer consciousness and the absolute force and the unimaginable and formless bliss. To the mirth in time and the timeless mystery of the triune being who is all and one, and yet is no one but Himself apart. What is the purpose of this world? To the abiding, which is the eternal vow, it is to that they are climbing. To the pure existence, consciousness, force, bliss. They are climbing to the Satchidananda realms, to the worlds of Satchidananda, existence, consciousness, bliss, Satchitananda. To the pure existence everywhere the same, to the sheer consciousness and absolute force, Chit Shakti, Sat Chit Shakti, and the unimaginable and formless bliss, Ananda. To the mirth in time, for what? To the happiness in time, to the mirth in time, and the timeless mystery of the triune being, triune again, Satchitananda, who holds in him all these three, and at the same time, who is alone, who is also present everywhere. To the abiding and eternal is their climb of these innumerable worlds. The climb of these innumerable worlds is their climb. To the pure existence, everywhere the same, in the sheer consciousness and the absolute form, and the unimaginable and formless flame, to the mirth in time and the timeless mystery of the triune being who is all and one, and yet is no one but Himself apart. Savitri has entered the courtyard of her soul's rock-hewn temple. She is seeing On the walls of the temple, all kinds of figures and depictions presenting the life of man and beast and God. There was no step of breathing men. In that rock-hewn temple, all the figures were carved in stone, and there was no step of breathing men. You should not hear any man passing by. No sound, only the livingness of the soul. What she is experiencing is only the livingness of her soul. Yet, all the worlds and God Himself were there. Although there is no sound, everything appeared without any movement. All the worlds and God Himself were there. For every symbol was a reality. When she is looking at the gods, all these depictions in the temple, everything looked to her like a reality. For every symbol was a reality and brought the presence which had given it life. It is the divine presence which had given life to those figures on the rock-hewn temple, on the walls of the rock-hewn temple. For every symbol was a reality and brought the presence which had given it life. That is the unique experience Savitri is having, that even the gods and goddesses on the temple rock, they are able to bring to her the divine presence. All this she saw and inly felt and knew, not by some thought of mind, but by the self, by her inner perception, power of herself, Atma Jnana. All this she saw and inly felt and knew, not by thought of mind. What can mind do? Nothing. That presence residing in these gods, in these stone gods and goddesses, what can mind know of that? But Savitri's soul is awakened and she is able to see those things. Not by some thought of mind, but by the self. A light not born of sun nor moon nor fire. A light that dwelt within and saw within, shedding an intimate visibility, made secrecy more revealing than the word. Our sight and sense are a fallible gaze and touch, and only the Spirit's vision is wholly true. A light not born of sun, nor moon, nor fire. This is a direct reference to the descriptions we have in the Upanishad. Na tatra suryo bhati, na chandra tarakam, and goes on like that. It is that reference we have got here. A light not born, na tatra suryo bhati. A light not born of sun, na tatra suryo bhati. Nor moon, nor fire. There the sun shines not, and the moon has no splendor, and stars are blind. When you are face to face, that the stars are blind. There these lightnings flash not, nor these thousandfold energies. There the fire burns not, has no light. A light not born of sun, nor moon, nor fire, a light that dwelt within and knew within. It is that light which is within the soul. It is that which is seeing all those presences into stone-carved gods and goddesses, shedding an intimate visibility, such closeness, because of that light, visibility, made secrecy more revealing than the word. What word can I express? What words are unable to describe? It is that which Savitri is seeing with a sort of an intimate visibility because of that light. Our sight, because why? Because our sight and sense are a fallible gaze. They are not dependable always. And touch, and only the Spirit's vision is wholly true. What is true is only the Spirit's vision. So what Savitri is seeing, she is seeing with the vision of the Spirit. As thus she passed in that mysterious place, she is going from door to door, inward, inward, inward. As thus she passed in that mysterious place, through room and room, through door and rock-hewn door, she felt herself made one with all she saw. All the divine presences residing in the stone statues, she felt she herself was that. A sealed identity, she has established identity with them. Within her woke, she has at once identified herself with all those presences. She knew herself the beloved of the Supreme. Savitri knew herself that she is the beloved of the Supreme. These gods and goddesses were he and she. These gods and goddesses were the beloved and the Supreme. She has experienced that thing. She knew herself the beloved of the Supreme. These gods and goddesses were he and she. The mother was she of beauty and delight. She is Lakshmi, the beautiful, the charming, the most harmonious. The mother was she of beauty and delight. Lakshmi with his companion Vishnu. The mother was she of beauty and delight. The word in Brahma's vast creating class. Brahma, the creator, he is holding in his arms his spouse, Saraswati, word, Brahma, the power of expression. He is holding in his arms the word. The world puisance on Almighty's Shiva's lap. Shiva on his lap, Parvati sitting. World puissance. She is the power of this world. World puissance on Almighty Shiva's lap. The master and the mother of all lives, watching the worlds that twin the God had made. The master of this creation and the mother, they are watching this whole world here, watching the worlds that twin the God had made, and Krishna and Radha forever entwined in bliss. In happy union, Krishna and Radha always tied together. The adorer and the adored, self-lost and one. They have lost into each other. They have become one. Adorer has lost himself in the adored. The adored has lost herself in the adorer. A seated identity within her woke. She knew herself the beloved of the Supreme. These gods and goddesses were he and she. The mother was she of beauty and delight, the word in Brahma's vast creating clasp, the word puisance on Almighty Shiva's lap, the master and the mother of all lives, watching the worlds that twenty God had made, and Krishna and Radha forever entwined in bliss. Anandamaya Purusha and Anandamaya Prakriti locked together. The adorer and adorned, self-lost and one. In the last chamber, while Savitri is going from chamber to chamber, from room to room, crossing door after door, in the last chamber on a golden seat, one sat whose shape no vision could define. It is impossible to describe that vision Savitri is seeing there. Only one felt the words unattainable found. Yes, that is the source of this world. She only feels that, yes, everything comes only from that source. One felt the words unattainable found, a power of which she was a straying force. Savitri realizes that, yes, she is the power of that undefinable presence there. Only one felt the words unattainable found, a power of which she was a straying force, an invisible beauty, goal of the world's desire. That is what the world is striving for. The urge of this world is to reach the invisible beauty, the sun of which all knowledge is a beam. It is a small part. This knowledge of ours is just a small part of the sun of full knowledge, full splendor. An invisible beauty, goal of the world's desire, a sun of which all knowledge is a beam, a greatness without whom no life could be. Had that not been there, this life would not exist. It is that greatness Savitri is approaching, is nearing, is seeing. Thence all departed into silent self. While she is witnessing these powers and presences and the source of this creation, she also sees that everything has departed into the silent self, and all became formless and pure and bare. No figure is there, no gods, no goddesses, no creature, nothing. And all became formless and pure and bare, the true absolute. Then through a tunnel dug in the last rock, then through a tunnel dug in the last rock, she came out where there shone a deathless sun. She is entering into a region now where shines the deathless sun. Then through a tunnel dug in the last rock, she came out where there shone a deathless sun. A house was there, all made of flame and light, and crossing a wall of doorless living fire, there suddenly she met her secret soul. A house was there, all made of flame and light, and crossing a wall of doorless living fire, there suddenly she met her secret soul. It is that place to which Savitri was guided by the wise sage when she was in search of her soul. She has now come to that point, a house where All is made of flame and light. And she is crossing the last door, and suddenly she meets her secret soul.